Thank you. Good evening, folks. It is 6 o'clock. I'm Sue Hodgen, the chair of the Southport's Planning Board, and I'm going to call our regular meeting for the month of June to order. We ask that everyone please silence or turn off your cell phones. We'll start as we always do with everyone standing who can and will. We'll get our invocation from Will and give our allegiance to flag and country.
Our beloved Father in heaven, we are so very grateful and thankful today to come together and meet this planning board for the city of Southport. We're grateful that thou hast given us such a beautiful day in thy kingdom and that we may partake of it. We ask for wisdom in all that we do and that when we travel home, that we do so in safety. And in these things and all things, we ask for in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Will. We will move ahead with our agenda. Item D is the approval of the minutes. We're doing a bit of catch up with the board minutes. Members were issued the drafted minutes from April 15 in advance of this meeting. It's on pages 2 through 11 of your packets. Are there any additions or corrections to that? I actually do have one. If you look on page 7, Tori, the third paragraph, the second line, it says stretching from Bald Head Limited to East West Partners. I'll email it to you just to remind you, and then to put a hard paragraph in after that, and when we start the current CZ proposal discussion there. But I'll email those to you. Are there any other corrections? Then do I hear a motion to approve the April 17 regular meeting minutes as drafted with those corrections? Thank you, Will and Larry. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And we're understanding there's been some cyber issues with our May meeting recording, so those minutes haven't been completed. We'll wait on their approval, hopefully next month, and hope the recording will reappear so that everything's recorded properly out for ours and the public's use. Agenda item E then is the approval of tonight's agenda. You received this in advance of the meeting as well. Are there any additions or corrections to it? Do I hear a motion then that we approve that agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Bob and Will. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item F is public comment. Motion to move into public comment, please. Thank you. Thank you. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion again passes unanimously. Madam Deputy, do we have anyone wishing to speak? We always ask for any e-submitted comments then. Anybody?
No, ma'am, we don't.
Thank you. Is there anyone here tonight that didn't sign up but would like to address the board? Welcome to do so. Not hearing any, do I hear a motion to end public comment? Thank you. And a second? Thank you, Larry. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item G, old business. Moving right along. Our only item there is a zoning text amendment for Article 6, Stormwater Regulations Ordinance. And we have our city engineer, Tom Z, with us tonight. Glad to have you.
I'll start with just a little. Good. Did I turn it off? Technology. All right, proposed stormwater ordinance, just a quick overview of things. Purpose of the ordinance is to protect, maintain, enhance public health, safety, and general welfare by controlling the adverse effects of stormwater associated with new development within the city. This is for new development, not to address existing things that are out there. This is done through mitigating runoff, through flood control, groundwater recharge, and pollutant reduction. What does this ordinance do? It establishes methods to manage the quantity of stormwater runoff. It establishes methods to manage the quality of the stormwater runoff. We want to deal with both quantity and quality, especially on the larger sites. It identifies stormwater best management practices. It encourages the use of green infrastructure best management practices. It provides different standards for minor and major development. Both of these should be treated differently because they are two different animals, two different types of things. It provides a waiver for properties for exceptional hardship. It outlines the requirements for a stormwater plan. It provides technical standards. It includes safety standards for detention basins. It details the permit process. It includes maintenance repair requirements for the facilities. If the facilities fail, the system fails. This has things in there to ensure that the facilities will continually operate. And lastly, it establishes legal authority to inspect it, monitor, and enforce compliance with the ordinance. So the first thing it does is creates two categories, a minor development and a major development. And this would apply to all lots within the city, including non-conforming lots. The current ordinance does not have any application to a minor application. So, minor development. This is primarily infill housing and additions. This is the biggest issue in town. There aren't that many large tracts that are going to be developed going forward. Most of the complaints that are happening with flooding and all within the city are due to people putting additions on, tearing down a little cottage and building something bigger, or just putting additional houses in where there is none now. Under the current ordinance, nothing covers this. So this captures those very small projects that collectively contribute to an increase in stormwater. It applies to any development that increases impervious surface by 800 or more square feet or disturbs more than 2,000 square feet of land. And the requirement here would be to infiltrate 2 inches per square foot of new impervious coverage. How is this accomplished? The two main ones are to construct a rain garden, which is just a landscaped area that can handle and address these needs. Not something that's unsightly. It actually would enhance the area that it's in. And the second would be a dry well. There are waivers, and that is that you demonstrate meeting the standards would result in an exceptional hardship, or show that the benefits to the public good of not doing something would substantially outweigh the detriments of the development. Major developments. This would apply to anything that's more than 10,000 square feet of increased impervious coverage. Does not apply to an individual lot owner. This is for large tracts of land. Requires first water quantity. The 2-year peak flow leaving the site needs to be reduced by 50%. The 10-year peak flow leaving the site needs to be reduced by 70%. And the 100-year peak flow needs to be reduced by 80%. The second thing it addresses is water quality. And it calls for an 80% total suspended solids removal for the water quality design storm. It uses groundwater recharge and green best management practices. So how does what's proposed compare to the current ordinance? Current ordinance doesn't kick in until there's 10,000 square feet of increased impervious coverage or 1 acre of disturbance. Under this proposed ordinance, it kicks in on 800 square feet of impervious coverage for a minor development or 2,000 square feet of disturbance for that same minor development, and that's an either or. On the major, it kicks in on 2,500 square feet of impervious or 10,000 square feet of disturbance. Currently, as I said, the minor development has no regulations. It's not addressed anywhere in our code. In the proposal, as I said, we're infiltrating 2 inches per square foot of new impervious coverage from the lot. For the major development, water quantity. Currently, the ordinance calls for no increase in peak flow from the 2, 10, and 25-year storm. We're going for a 2-year storm peak flow reduction of 50% leaving the site, a 10-year flow reducing the site by 75%, and a 100-year storm, not a 25-year storm, flow reduction of 80%. Water quality under the current, there is no total suspended solids. In the proposed, we're looking at an 80% total suspended solid removal for the water quality storm, using, once again, groundwater recharge and green best management practices. Another thing that's in the current ordinance that isn't in the existing, this ordinance requires an annual maintenance permit for detention facilities. That permit ensures that the stormwater facility is operating properly. The permit requires the owner or the manager of that detention facility to fill out quarterly maintenance logs and submit them, stating that they're looking at various items that could fail or cause cause the facility to not operate properly. Does not need to be filled out by an engineer, could be filled out by any member of a homeowners association, a business owner, whatever. Individual property owners are exempt from the maintenance permit. It does not apply to individual dry wells or rain gardens in that. So there is no undue going on a regular homeowner. Moving away from the ordinance itself, things to look to going forward. First thing is a land disturbance ordinance. This would go hand in hand with the stormwater ordinance. It would preserve trees and woodlands from unjustifiable destruction. It would preserve soil from erosion and sedimentation, and it would protect the use and transfer of topsoil. So this would be the next step once the stormwater ordinance is in. After that, there's additional items to look at, or that can be looked at the same time. Getting impervious coverage limits on the town. There are none right now. Lot coverage limits and floor area ratio limits. So with that, I know you have the ordinance, the latest revision from yesterday, working through some items. So if there's any questions, comments.
Well, this wasn't that. I'm very impressed with what's been done here. It's excellent. The additional requirements, the increased requirements that have been put in, and I thank staff and this committee for looking at this and trying to get these things put in place. Can I ask, and I'm understanding that this is from this point on, okay?
Correct.
So in communities that have their own retention ponds covered under an HOA, this doesn't pertain to them unless it's a new one coming in, right? They will be under the old DEQ requirements.
The only requirement in here that would apply to them would be the maintenance permit. They would have to fill out the annual maintenance permit and show that they're doing the work and making sure that the basin is operating properly. That's the only retroactive thing in this ordinance for them. Unless they were to increase the size of the development, then they would have to comply with the new quantity and quality regulations. But the maintenance permit part would apply to any detention basin that's currently out in town.
So then they would, the clean out of those areas would have to be documented so that they're keeping them ready to receive that flood water that's coming in and be able to disperse it back out again.
Correct. There's a maintenance sheet that would go out to every homeowners association or whatever that they would have to fill out quarterly and return back to the city.
Now, just so everybody, when the recording goes out, why now with all of this? And that's not a critique. I'm just saying we've had some big rains, some big floods. I mean, for a long time. Was it lack of expertise on staff to move forward with getting this bumped up? Is that what it was? Why? And I'm so glad it's being done, but why now?
I started, I guess it was just over 2 years ago, as part-time engineer for the city. Prior to that, I don't know that the city really had a city engineer for any amount of time or anybody that was really looking at these kind of things as a whole package. Part of my background is, getting this kind of ordinance done in other communities and all. So it was something that I saw was needed in town. When you have houses going up on a lot or people putting additions on and there's no requirement for them to address the increased stormwater, that's a problem for me. So that's what triggered it. This was, something that I saw, talked to the previous city manager about it, got the go ahead to start working on it, and, had been working with Mo for a good year and a half on this to get it to this point.
That's what I kind of wanted to lay out, that this has been something that's been in the works for a while. And I'm so, like I say, I'm so grateful, and I'm glad to hear what's next coming out of it, that already we know where it has to go from
Right.
here. The land disturbance, that's going to be important to people. The impervious limits, that's been discussed for a long time, and the lot coverage. We hear that talked about too, that you, like you say, take down a little cottage and all of a sudden something comes up that if they can, they'll go lot line to lot line.
Right.
If nobody's really paying attention.
And there's nothing in the current ordinance to stop you from doing that.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. So I'm very grateful for all of y'all's, the committee's conversations in all of this, and for y'all's work on all of this too. Now, talk about enforcement, because that's a part of all of this. It's kind of everything these days. We've got Larry forwarded out to all of the board members that we're not the only ones looking at all this. Savannah's doing a lot of work on theirs right now. Other towns in our state are working on this. So it's become kind of the thing to make sure that everything's covered for the city or for a town in it. But what about enforcement when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to?
Well, I mean, there's parts in the ordinance that call how to handle that. There's a notification if we're not getting the quarterly reports, that we would go out and notify them. If the report comes back that there's something wrong on it, or that we just happen to do a drive-by inspection and see something wrong, we would give them a notice. They would have to, within 14 days, get back to us to say, here's how we're going to address that. And then there's time limits on getting it done. If it doesn't get in with a certain time, there's clauses in here that the city can go out and effectuate the repairs and charge them for the cost of doing those repairs.
And I saw that. I just
Okay.
kind of wanted that on the record for everybody else that didn't get the 143 pages.
Oh, no,
so
it's
that
only
there's-
39. We cut
I
it
mean,
down,
the whole thing the whole thing for the night.
front and back.
So that's important to me too, because that's it. And is that, and Mo, you can probably, both of you can answer to this. Will this be a staffing issue for enforcement to take care of all of this, you think, or is it the process is already working?
The
for-
process is already working. You know, the quarterly reports is not a big thing. Once you get the chart, the list of all of them together, which I'm working on, it'll just mean, you know, having a checklist and quarterly sending out a letter to all those people, hey, your maintenance report is due. And when it comes in, checking it off a box, you know, that they submitted it. So it's not overly cumbersome on that part of it. On the initial side, we've already started the process of anything that comes into the building department for any kind of permit is being sent over to me for comment, even though we have nothing right now that I can comment on. But we've started that process of sending things over for my initial, you know, look at to say, this may be a problem, it's okay, or, you know, whatever.
And again, our committee members that worked on this, I'm very appreciative of y'all taking their comments, working them in. It's a rare thing when more minds are a detriment to something to look at. So it's good to have more eyes and more brains, and the expertise. I keep saying this over and over again. Our setup, the folks that we've got on the planning board now, their prior experience and expertise, we see it coming out more and more in the things that the town's working on. So I thank you for taking all of those things into consideration for us too. I think this is going to be a big help. What other members have questions for Mr. Z?
I have a question. Is there any regulation for minor developments about how much soil can be brought in and changing the grade?
That is part of what I said, the land disturbance ordinance. That would be the next phase to this. That would encompass, if an application comes in, they would have to provide a site plan with a grading plan showing how they're changing the grade. You know, a small town like this, someone brings in some fill on their site and raises it, they've now affected their neighbors because all the you know, stormwater is going to them. So that's not in this, but that's, you know, the next step after would be that land disturbance permit and a soil removal permit, soil import permit, that kind of thing. The other thing that would be in that is getting any soil coming into town tested. We don't want contaminated soil being brought into town. So that, you know, that is part of that ordinance also. Next step.
So for right now, with the ordinance the way it is, or lack of, is it sort of a free for all if I wanted to raise my lot 18 inches? And
Unfortunately, yes, there is no code that we can, you know, go and it would become a civil matter. Unfortunately, it's needed.
so in the big picture, how far out would it be where that could be controlled?
That ordinance is pretty much written. We just didn't want to bring everything in at once. We wanted to hit this one step at a time and keep working through it. So, you know, once this gets through, we'll go to that. It could be done within a couple of months if that's, you know, the way people want to go with it.
I'm expanding my vocabulary. Recharge, I didn't know what that meant. Evapotranspired. I could just have to imagine what that means.
Evaporation. The longer it is, it sounds much more impressive.
I don't have any questions. You've had enough questions from the committee. We've asked everything that we could possibly ask, but I did want to comment, a couple comments, and you know, you covered this well. This is the first step, right?
Correct.
But it's an important step, and you know, to me, the two big things that it provides, I guess, for every man, you know, for the common resident is it requires you to manage the stormwater on your property. Not to send
Correct.
it to the neighbor, not send it to the ditch. You have to manage it. Number one. And number two, you have to maintain it. You have to be responsible for whatever you put in. And again, you know, homeowners associations and things, I mean, everywhere in the country gets stuck with things that looked good on paper, but 5 years after they were built, they're already filled up and destroyed and non-functional. But hopefully between this and some of the future stages of this work, we can really increase the emphasis on maintenance
Yes.
and responsibility.
Yes.
So, but
Yes.
I wanted to commend you and Mo and the staff, because this was, it's very timely, it's very important, and it was not easy. We didn't make it easy.
That's your job.
Anyone else?
Just quickly, but I just want to also expound on what John was saying. Thank you for your patience. I probably asked a boatload of questions that more from a layman standpoint than John and Kevin from their expertise, but I think this is a great document. I know it's a ton of work, even just keeping it all straight. So kudos to all of you in the planning department. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
One last question for me. With existing major site developments right now, with the stormwater management plans that have to be maintained, is that like 20 places or is that 10?
I'm just starting to compile. I have to go through, go on Google Earth and actually look to see where these are to go and find them. It's probably 20 to 25, but until I actually really sit down, there was another part to this ordinance that has to be updated, which is not, the board's responsibility or anything. There's a stormwater manual that the town has. So that has to be updated to incorporate these changes into it. So right now, that's the bigger focus that I'm working on, is trying to get that manual updated to include language from this and other items that are in there that shouldn't be taken out. So give me a couple months and I can give you an exact answer of how many there are.
Curious how big your world would be in terms of worrying about that with the current level.
It's not a big deal. Like I said, the work is the initial work of finding them and meeting with the HOAs and explaining what has to be done. Once that's done, it's just a form letter that'll go out every quarter. And, when it comes in, checking off the list. If I don't hear from them, reaching out and saying, hey, you need to do your maintenance. So it's not an overbearing task at all. It's just the initial setup is finding them.
So one last thought, and I'll be quiet. Is this an opportunity at some point for the city to look at developments that are not like from the 70s, for example, where there is no wastewater, a stormwater plan? Is there an opportunity to introduce some into those kind of areas?
Not through this ordinance. This ordinance was for any new applications going forward. Things that aren't there now, we could go through them and try to help them get grants to do improvements to it. But beyond that, if it's not a city basin or anything, it's really on them. What we're doing on the city side, not that it has anything to do with this ordinance, but just with flooding. Last year in October, we finally completed the first mapping of the stormwater system since 1983. As part of that mapping, we also had the system modeled and development of a 10-project capital improvement plan. So we're just starting to line up getting those capital improvements done, and that's going to take, 5 or 10 years just to get the initial 10 done, and hopefully relieve some flooding through that. It's about a $40 million tab on those 10 projects. So.
kind of like highway projects. By the time you get through with the initial 10, you'll realize how far behind you are already again. Right.
Yeah, kind of like painting a bridge. You start at one end, when you get to the other end, you got to go back and paint it all over again.
Anyone else? Not hearing any comments, can I get a motion then to accept the drafted zoning text amendment for our UDO Article 6 stormwater regulations for forwarding to the Board of Aldermen for final adoption? Thank you. Thank you, Larry. There is a motion on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. I will need for someone, please, to read the statement of consistency and recommendation for ZTA 25-02. In your packet, it is on page 53. Okay. That's okay. I'll read it. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning text amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2014 CAMA Core Land Use Plan, originally adopted November 13th, 2014, and subsequently amended by the Southport Board of Aldermen. More specifically, Policy 5.2. Southport recognizes the value of water quality to the protection of fragile areas and to the provision of clean water for recreational and tourism purposes, and supports the control of stormwater runoff to aid in the preservation of water quality. All right, folks, moving on to item H for us tonight is new business. We have one item for that as well. This is a zoning map amendment for a local historic district overlay. Mo?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Board. This is a zoning map amendment for the local establishment of the local historic district with a zoning overlay. This, as you know, has been work taken place by the Historic Preservation Commission for the last couple of years. So we are very happy we've made it this far. If you'll notice, we have two of our members here this evening. We've got Josh Klein McGee and Bonnie Bray. They are members of the Historic Preservation Commission. And Chair Charles Drew was not able to attend this evening. He apologizes. He had a prior engagement this evening. I would like to introduce to you Penny Tysinger. She came on board last year, and we were able to hire her as both a permit technician and as our part-time historic preservation planner. She has got wonderful quasi-judicial background from her previous planning days, so she's going to be very instrumental in helping the board go through the processes and make sure that the meetings are moving forward and the decisions are made in the proper process. So with no, Penny, if I may, and she will go through the zoning map amendment for you. Oh, this is our commission members. I wanted just to outline who they are this evening. And so there you go. Welcome.
That's tall. Good evening. Madam Chair and board members, it is my pleasure to be here this evening to present the next step in the Historic Preservation Commission, or which I will reverse to HPC, process in creating our local district. As Mo said, it's been a long road to get here this evening. So what we've done is a little flow chart for you to go over the basic local historic district designation process. But without going into a lot of great detail, I'll just give you a quick overview and where you fit into this process. So in support of our comprehensive land use plan, in September of 2022, the Board of Aldermen adopted an ordinance creating the HPC. The next step was for the HPC to adopt rules of procedure and to develop those design standards. They held public workshops, and they brought a draft even to this board as a courtesy review, I believe in January of 2024. We hired a consultant who helped us develop an inventory of all structures within the proposed district and develop the local designation report. This is the report that you have in your packets. And I'd like to mention at this point, there's an interactive map on the city's webpage that shows where the database was created for this report. Users can click on the property. It'll show them current imagery of the structures as well as a description of each of the buildings. All of the documents that they are in the process of adopting are also listed on our webpage. Once the report was completed and recommended by the HPC, it was sent to the State Historic Preservation Office, which is SHPO for short, for their review. We have received their review, and the HPC has recommended the local district designation report, which includes the overlay district map and the design standards. Now, this is where you come into the process. The regular legislative process for establishing an overlay district is before you this evening for your recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. The staff report that you received earlier and have reviewed outlines a detail of the rezoning overview process. Once you give your recommendation, we will forward it to the Board of Aldermen for a public hearing, which could tentatively be scheduled for their July 10th meeting. Once the alderman holds their public hearing, they will take action on the report, the map, and the standards. And then we will officially have our local district. We'll be so excited. This final step will be before the commission to formally, the final step before the commission, the Historic Commission begins, is to formally notify those listed on the screen, which you will see in the next to the last block. And then we're open for business. The commission will hold regularly scheduled monthly meetings, which are the first Wednesday of each month at 4 o'clock. They will conduct hearings that are quasi-judicial proceedings and will issue COAs to individuals so that they can begin their projects. Now, that's the short overview. I mean, it was 3 years. It was pretty quick. Now, let's see if I can move this. This is the basic overlay zoning map. The boundary is a modified version of our 1980 National Register and the 2010 National Register study boundary. Some areas from the original and the study areas are not in the proposed local district due to the loss of historical significance. Now, just briefly describe that boundary for you. It's in yellow on the screen for you. But to the north is Brown Street. To the east, it will go the rear properties of Rhett Street. On the south, it will follow the city limit lines along the waterfront. And then the west, it meanders basically South Caswell to Westmore to Brunswick to Short Streets, and then it kind of follows the backs of property lines up to Brown Street. Interestingly, there are 331 properties that were surveyed. Of those, 247 buildings were designated as contributing properties. 84 buildings were designated as non-contributing. The local district is predominantly single-family residential. It has 60 commercial buildings, 11 religious and institutional facilities, 1 Fort Johnson, 2 cemeteries, and 4 parks. Now, this is your basic zoning map. The area within the local historic district has a base zoning of R10 residential and commercial CBD and BD. Now, all the regulations will still apply to these properties within the local district, in addition to design standards as they are adopted. Applicants will then present their projects before the HPC. So folks in the overlay apply for a COA, that is a certificate of appropriateness, before the Historical Commission, who will conduct a quasi-judicial hearing. Then once the COA is obtained, they then follow their normal permitting process. So in conclusion, the zoning changes must consult with the land use plan, and rezoning must be recommended and adopted with a statement of consistency or inconsistency with the land use plan. There are 8 policies listed in your staff report that support the adoption of the local district. Therefore, the staff takes the recommendation per the HPC and submits the proposed local historic district overlay zoning district for approval to the Board of Aldermen. The proposal appears to be consistent with the 2014 CAMA Land Use Core Land Use Plan and is reasonable due to the physical conditions of the properties within the proposed overlay, the benefits to the landowners and the community as a whole, and is in the public interest to preserve the historic character of our city. Well, I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have, and thank you for allowing me to present to you this evening.
What questions do we have for Penny? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what a boatload of work. Yeah, I went through the document and with the listings, and I just absolutely phenomenal amount of work. I can see, I would have thought it would have taken 10 years for all that kind of work, but nicely done. That is really the only comment that I have to say at the moment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
I'm new to this, so I'm just going to ask, what's the difference on the map between the residents marked National Register and the ones indicated as study listed? So the green or purple?
The study listed area ones, the green triangles listed there, were probably most likely ones that were not built during the time when they first, from the difference of the historic register, when we received that in the, what did I say, 80s to now in the study area.
So they're not already on the National Register. They could apply for that, but they're not on it. Our study just listed them as being able to do that if they wanted
Yes.
to.
And they are always now, as soon as they were built, within the National Register area.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Well, I'm like Larry, this local designation report, it's a great history read all by itself to sit and go through it. It really is. It was a lot of work. The first couple commission meetings I attended and listened to the folks that were coming in, that, I mean, you always hear a lot of concerns about their property because they're in the area and they're already the wheels are turning. What can I do? What can I not do? It was good to hear those kinds of comments coming out. But once this got legs and started going on its own, I mean, y'all did the brunt, the commission itself. Kudos to y'all for getting this done. And it has been a long time coming. And I know it takes time for it to go through cultural resources and get the okay back on it. And so I'm proud. Y'all said before the meeting started, I'm proud all they had to say was, don't take the water. Move that line, don't take the water, not yours to take. But it speaks, all of this, I think, speaks to the citizenry's desire to get this taken care of and recognize that we always say in our core values from the comp plan that we value our history and we want to take care of it. This is finally another piece of doing that. So I'm really proud that this has gotten done to kind of help preserve our historic character, because we heard this during the public hearings for the comp plan, that this is what everybody wanted to keep going. So it's meshed really well for this to be happening all at the same time. I think it's a great direction again for the city to take, and we were all kind of shocked that it wasn't done a long time ago. I think maybe when it was first done in the 80s, when that designation was made, maybe folks realized how much work was going to be involved. And the brakes squealed on that at that point. But again, thank y'all for doing that. Any other comments or questions?
I'm very excited and supportive of it. And so I think it's going to be a great thing. Thank you.
Anything else? Can I get a motion then that we accept the drafted zoning map amendment for official, I'm so glad to say this, for official designation of a historic district overlay for the R10, CBD, and BD districts for forwarding to the Board of Aldermen for final adoption?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you, guys. Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Penny, for presenting this. I will need someone. There you go. It's worth it. I will need someone again to read that statement of consistency. It's on page 59 in your packets.
Got it
Thank
on my
you,
phone,
Larry.
yeah. Statement of consistency and recommendation. The City of Southport Planning Board hereby recommends adoption of the proposed zoning map amendment to the Board of Aldermen and finds that it is consistent with the city's 2014 Camercall Land Use Plan, originally adopted November 13th, 2014, and subsequently amended by the Southport Board of Aldermen. More specifically, Policy 7.1, Southport will protect its historic resources as a valuable cultural and economic asset. Further, this map amendment is reasonable due to the physical conditions of the properties within the proposed overlay, the benefits to the landowners and community as a whole, and is in the public interest to preserve the historic character of the city.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving along to item I on our agenda, our other business. Miss Meehan's director's update.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I have a couple things I'd like to go over, and I know that the board had requested that we revisit the mural section of the sign ordinance as well. So if you will allow me, I'll go ahead and do the smaller updates that I wanted to go through, and then we can get into the discussion with the mural text itself. First, I would like to give an update on the Southport Multimodal Project Acceleration Plan that we have been awarded a grant from NCDOT for this project. And this plan will outline clear steps for implementation to support more walkable and bikeable community here in Southport. So this is a project implementation. It utilizes recently completed plans or plans that we already exist, such as our newly written and hopefully adopted very shortly comprehensive plan, as well as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So they'll be looking at existing conditions and different implementation from those plans, as well as looking at on-the-ground projects that they can propose to the city and also help us find funding sources to get those on the ground and moving forward. So that is the purpose of this. There is a button, and we have our a website page for this plan itself within the development services page. So it's a multimodal button on the development services page. And there you'll find maps. Right now we've got some goals of the project itself up. There's a contact form if you'd like to fill it out so that you can be contacted for any updates moving forward. They're also going to be having a public survey available in the late summer, early fall, which will coincide with some public engagement that we'll be having as well. So I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and keep your eyes out. We will definitely keep updating the board as things move along. When there are some documentations to bring forward, we'll be happy to do that. And then when the meetings are available, and scheduled, we'll provide that information as well. So that's a multimodal. The next, I wanted to just touch base there on some kind of a legislative update for you. There's a Senate Bill 205 that was in its third iteration, I believe. So on the 11th of this month, it pulled in sections of House Bill 765, which was the omnibus, so the zoning omnibus, so that it used to be just about some swimming pool regulations that needed to be added, but now it's including a lot of these land use regulations that we need to make sure we keep an eye on, and staff is keeping an eye on, but I wanted to make everyone aware that that is out there. There has not been any movement since last week, but it is still there. And some of the main points, the biggest one is it limits the zoning authority, so it only allows the authority offered by 160D. It removes flexibility for conditional zoning, so you can't do the back and forth negotiations with developers and the local government that is so beneficial of conditional zoning now. The whole purpose of us, wanting in this. It reduces the allowable parking requirements that the municipality can require. It defines a dwelling unit and says that the rezonings or the zoning classifications have to be by density rather than lot size itself. The way it's written now, it wouldn't affect our zoning districts, but that is in it. Local staff designation must be made for administrative decisions and would also make subdivisions, major subdivision administratively approved at the staff level. It provides new timing for approval. It really speeds up the permit review time and permit, and when I say permit, I mean more applications. So these are major developments, proposals or subdivisions will have an increased review timing. And then another big one is the plan consistencies that are read anytime there is a text amendment or map amendment. And now they are not subject to judicial review. If there's ever like someone who appeals or takes the case to court, they could use these consistencies as part of their decision on those. So those are some of the big ones.
And now the Senate Bill 205 that does some of this wrapping up of in the House bill, where does it sit now? Do you know? It's
in
okay,
the
I
House
can look it
It's in
out.
a House committee right now.
It's in a House
Yes,
committee.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could, Madam Chair, under this proposed bill, did you say that you do administrative reviews for large projects?
It didn't spell out site plans
Yeah.
review, but it did spell out subdivision review. So any of the major subdivision would then become administrative. So what now is a final decision by the Board of Aldermen would be done administratively.
So how big is your department going to need to be able to do that? Do you have any projections on how much we would have to increase staff to be able to handle these sort of things?
For the major subdivisions, I don't think it would be, we don't have a lot of large tracts of land left.
Right.
Unless people started banking land and re-subdividing it. But as it stands, I don't think it would be that much of an issue as long as we were able to get the timing down.
But didn't you say the timing was accelerated as well?
Yes, so there's going to be a lot of moving
wondering
parts.
what would happen with staff.
Right.
It's like you'd have to give up everything else over here
Right.
to be able to have to do this project here. Everything
Yeah,
else will come to a
potentially
full
we
stop.
may need some staffing necessary, yes.
Okay, thank you. Which I'm sure they're going to fund.
You're talking about the General Assembly funding that.
Exactly.
You're so funny. I'm just wondering, should we just go ahead and somewhere in building recommendations for the city, just go ahead and put you an apartment in at City Hall because you're going to be living there, Mo.
I hope we're zoned for mixed use. All right, so those were the two things I really wanted to go over with you this evening, other than bringing up the murals. Like I mentioned, there were some members of the board who requested that the mural language be brought back forward to the full board for discussion. And this has come about from a sign that was permitted that exists in the city, there's some questions about the interpretation of the text itself. What I would like to say is I'm happy to discuss the murals. Absolutely. I do not want to tear apart this applicant itself. I don't think this is really the platform for this, but I mean, I'm happy to speak of that separately, or I am going to recommend that this goes back to either the sign committee that originally worked on this language and or the existing UDO committee to go back after there's discussion. So I'm happy to discuss it then, but we can talk in, large, big picture, but I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the existing project that I know that we all know and love. So I will leave it up to you to start the discussion. I'm happy to help with any of the discussion.
No, I understand your reluctance about, you don't want to say get in the weeds with regard to the business, but in some respect you have to, because the issue of the interpretation is based upon your review of that particular sign/mural. So you can't have an intelligent conversation without looking at the presentation of what was done to why the city manager and you have decided that the ordinance doesn't apply, because how else can we make corrections unless there's a colloquy back and forth that should be open to the public? Now, in looking at this, the first question is, in the letter from the city manager, he refers to that the standard in determining whether this was appropriate or not was the murals ordinance, right? You've referenced the sign ordinance. So first and
So
foremost,
there's a lot of working. Murals was the one that kept coming up, but as murals are defined in the UDO, if it does not direct attention to an organization, a business operated for profit, a product, commodity, service, or sale or lease. So once they have added their logo, which they did to this, it then becomes a wall sign, and it meets the maximum size requirements for that. And then, so that takes it out of the art portion of it, and it is a sign. It can be regulated as a sign at that point.
okay, what's the definition of a wall sign as it exists? I mean, if you just know, because
Hold on.
when you look at what the definition of a mural is, well, I mean, we can always lay it out in more detail, but if you look at the definition, a mural is a picture, painting, or other artwork applied to and made an integral part of an exterior wall surface. So I don't see how what's done was not a mural versus a wall sign. Because then in the future, anyone can get around the mural statute by saying it's a wall sign.
If it's a wall sign, it has to meet the measurement requirements. So if someone wanted to do a mural on the side of their building or the rear of their building, they don't have to meet the sign size requirements that they have.
They just on the front of the building.
Only on the front portion, correct.
But, this question that still lingers is, how do you get around they get around the mural statute by just then what? So calling it a wall sign. So that's why I guess we have to look at the definition of a wall sign, because a mural talks about artwork applied and made an integral part of an exterior wall. I've never seen a wall sign similar to this. I know in the redo, they've scaled it down to comply with the measurements. But even if you look at signs, and the big issue is, do wall signs like murals demand that the signage is somehow compliant with what we're trying to accomplish in the historic district of Southport? Because even if you look at the general definition of signs, it says, I guess the main goal is to promote economic growth, but it also says to preserve the historic character. And so when you look at the intent of what the signs are at the very beginning of the sign ordinances, how does a Hawaiian theme, preserve the historic character. And then if you look at the mural aspect, the letter from the city manager doesn't reference wall signs. He references that it's subjective.
Well, agreed. So when this first came about, it was very much about being a mural. And if you look at the mural text, for what it's worth, it is very vague. And at that level of vagueness, it is hard to interpret what it really is objectively going to be reviewed.
Okay, and when you say vague, which sections? Because part 1 talks about where it's about location.
So the overall color scheme must be harmonious with the area and blend with historical colors of the community.
Okay.
So what is harmonious? What is the area we're speaking of? And what are the historical colors of the community? The next is the theme. It should promote greater community, including historic and regional factors compatible and designed with the historical character of Southport. Well, I know that we all want it to look great, but what is the greater community, and what exactly are these historic and regional factors that need to be included to be part of the mural? So
Okay.
without having true outline standards, and also murals are artwork. And so your First Amendment, you are allowed to do a lot of different things with artwork without being regulated as
Not
that.
when it's commercial. It's not as strictly construed when it's commercial mural. The clause cleared on that. It's changed in the last 10 years. When it deals with historic and aesthetics, cities and towns have been given a lot more leverage. And there's recent articles on that. So that part, because when I look at it, I look at what they've done in Hilton Head, other jurisdictions. I mean, Hilton Head, they say using colors that blend with nature and complement the surrounding environment. I mean. the
Does
state-
Hilton, okay, yes, agreed.
But I'm trying to understand because when we're dealing with, quote, subjectivity, that's not the standard of whether something is enforceable. It's whether it's so vague, it can't be understood. So when someone says it's subjective, that's not the standard. When you look
It's
at,
vague.
but is it so vague that the normal person couldn't understand it? And that's a pretty good standard, because when you look, okay, you have trouble with, I guess, the term harmonious. What's a synonym? Consistent? So it's a color scheme that's consistent with the area. Well, obviously the area is where the building's located, and blend with historical colors of the community. Well, you can take out historical if that's, but with the colors of the community, that's easy. You look around and what are the colors in the community? That's not vague, because if you go down Howell Street, what's vague about the colors that are right there to be seen? See, that's the trouble I'm having.
Right.
You know, I think we can, if we want to change it, fine. But I think when someone in this case didn't get a permit, first of all, they didn't get a permit. And then we find reasons why the ordinance isn't applicable, when I think the standards that apply aren't the right standards. And if you look, and if you go to the city attorney, I went back and looked at the Board of Aldermen meeting. He said the theme part was okay, and there was no criticisms of the colors asked of him or said by the city attorney when this was passed. So now that it's coming up, I just think that there are so many things that they failed to do, that to jump on the color scheme, because it still doesn't blend with the intent of what we want Southport to be downtown. Because it talks about preserving the historical character. Is that vague? That's in the sign ordinance. So I think this person went ahead, did it, and they're getting a free shot. And I think I would ask that, then we'll send it back, and we'll do whatever rewrite we have to do. But the thing that worries me more than anything is selective enforcement based upon when someone has done something. What's the easy way? When has anyone, whether you or Noah, asked the city attorney for a formal opinion, or even you can get one from the Attorney General's office? That's never done. And
I
that's,
have reached out to our city attorney, yes. And so we will be following up with that.
all right, well, I look forward to working with you to figure out how this doesn't happen again.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question on this? So I'm just curious, and I'm looking at the theme of the mural should promote the greater community, including historic and regional factors. So my esteemed colleague over to my right here, if this were to be called Cafe Shrimp and they painted shrimp up there and put pictures of oak trees and things like that, would that be an acceptable mural?
It's because, see, we made it broad enough. We tried to say regional and coastal themes
Mhm.
because we didn't want to deprive people of the choices. But it's just contrary to.
So it's the blend for the historic theme is what you're looking at, really? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you, Mo.
Anyone else? Comments, questions for Mo? Well, we obviously have some conversation to be had over this, so I believe it is best to refer it back to that sign committee that was originally formed for that. Fred, correct? And myself and Mr. Kevin. All right, we will send that back for some more work and report back to the board for that. Thank you for that conversation, that discussion. That, I think that helps the committee, helps the whole board get an understanding of why we feel like there might need to be some more work to be accomplished on that.
If I could, Madam Chair, really quickly.
Absolutely.
With respect to that particular location, is that on hold now then, Mo, until we work this out, or what's going on exactly?
It is being, right now it is, has a permit for it. We are waiting for them to come into compliance with the size requirements. Due to the rain, they were not able to change the paint, but they will be revising that and the colors to make them less fluorescent and neon.
But if we're revisiting this, is there some way to put that on hold? Because I would hate to have the ordinance change that then 6 months down the road, it would be okay. Is that even feasible? Or, I mean, are you allowed to put things like enforcement on hold until, if it's an actionable item?
No, they have permit choice that they're allowed to, since the permit is in, they are allowed to remain moving forward.
Okay. But I'm asking just the opposite. Can they say, we don't want it, we would like to wait to see what the planning board is going to come up with?
Yes, they can take that opportunity to do that. I cannot go back to them and ask them to do that.
Right, okay, thank you. It'd be at their own risk, actually, then. If they didn't do it, if they said, let's hold, and the ordinance stayed the same, then they would just, also would happen is the correction would be delayed by them, that's all. There wouldn't be any harm on their end, would it? I mean, we're not setting fees or some kind of penalty on a daily basis or anything like that. All right, good, thank you.
Next up is Mr. Biddle to give us a planning and zoning update. Sir.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good evening and happy Juneteenth. Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. This month's Board of Adjustment has been canceled. There's just a couple of issues that came up that presented themselves, and we currently do not have any variance or special use permit applications pending review. Staff have now not received any new minor or major site plan applications. Not yet. We have been in discussion with a couple of agencies about pre-application meetings and stuff. So we expect July's planning board will be a little bit more interesting with development review updates. As most of you know, we are currently working on multiple text amendments to the UDO with a proposed text amendment committee meeting to be held on July 10th. I'm still waiting on confirmation from a couple of members of the committee. But right now that's the day that we're looking at meeting again. And as most of you know, since losing the ETJ, the city has lost 3 zoning districts. And with that, we have lost the ability to zone several different land uses. Table 3.1 will be our primary text amendments for the community to review. This is going to be a big project similar to in scope to the stormwater text amendment that you guys just approved. The other proposed text amendments up for review will be a food truck ordinance, regulations on flagpoles, and an increase in setback standards for accessory structures that are multi-level. This concludes my development review update for June. At this time, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Wendell, what happened with manufactured housing?
It went away with the ETJ.
Well, we were going to
Oh.
update the UDO.
Yes,
And the
I'm so
zoning,
sorry.
Yeah.
I thought this was more of a philosophical question. No, manufactured housing, rather than just making that one text amendment, we've rolled that into table 3.1
Okay,
because it's not the only land use that we've lost. There's multiple that we've lost, and just like manufactured housing, there's a couple that are legally required that we have that we need to dissect and look where those they're going to be best located at for our community.
so manufactured housing is going to move on with those other land.
That's correct, sir.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
So flagpoles, manufactured housing, what was the first one you said would be wrapped in with all of that? Wendell, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Food truck ordinance,
Okay.
regulation on flagpoles, and we're looking at increasing the setback standards for accessory structures that are multi-level. So if you have a two-story garage, we don't want you blocking out your neighbor's lights. We're looking to correct that.
And drive-throughs.
Drive-throughs is on the docket for, we have so much time, so little time, and there's a lot of work to be done. If we can get it squeezed in for the July 10th meeting, absolutely. As of now, though, that's next on the docket after these items. Unless you're telling me, you're directing me that you want that to be a primary text amendment that you want to look at. Otherwise, then we can change it and something else will go by the wayside.
I'm one person, but my answer would be yes.
Noted.
I think the way to handle it, respectfully, can we handle it this way, is that we have the other items and we'll have that as, if we get to it, has it at least on the list? Because I know we'll be prepared on it.
Absolutely. I'll do my best to incorporate that there. It's just, we have a laundry list of text amendments and table 3.1 is a beast of one. So please bear with me if it's not completely ready for your review, but I'll do what I can for you.
Yeah, I just look at it as more important than than the food trucks, quite frankly.
Noted. Thank you.
I have one question. Can you or Mo comment on the current status of the right-of-way violations, how that's going with people conforming?
Yeah, we actually have a great success with that. Of the 80 or 90 or so violations that we originally flagged in January, Harlan Piles, the code enforcement officer, and myself have worked with the right-of-way committee. They generated some exemptions that alleviated a lot of those violations. And then they also gave the administration, the staff, the ability to make some judgment calls with the city manager's approval. That's also assisted us in alleviating some violations. We're down to about 22. On June 13th, when I sent out the notice of violation letters, I mailed out 22 violation letters. And some of these, we're just going to go, not this week, but next week, we're going to go door to door and talk to them and see what we can do to help them come into compliance. Something as simple as like, there's a churchyard that, there's a parcel that's owned by a church. They happen to have some logs in the right of way. We're just going to roll them out of the right of way for them. You know, that's something that we can do ourselves. Some things like that, you know, and then other things we're going to try our best to sell them to come into compliance. But it's been a success so far.
How's the compliance going down by Kingsley Park with the fence encroachment?
So that is going to be an administrative appeal, if I'm not mistaken. And we're waiting for that to be heard by the quasi judicial procedure by the Board of Adjustment. That's kind of a separate issue from the right-of-way thing. We were kind of directed by management to let the natural course of things going on with that administrative appeal go and not just pile on with, oh, by the way, this is a right-of-way infraction. So.
What's your feedback been from the people whose houses you're going to?
They love it. They love me. They love everything about it. It's been aces. No, it's not been the best feedback. It's been a lot of irritation and just wondering why. I would say that is the biggest question we get is why? Why now? People that have had swings in their right of way for 30 plus years, why do they have to have them removed now? The argument is this is what we think of Southport's charm. So we get a lot of subjective opinions on that. That's the biggest one is just people asking why, and there's some frustration. But like I said, once the right-of-way committee gave staff the ability to make some judgment calls, that's helped out a lot, and we've been able to smooth some rough seas with that.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else with comments? Thank you, Wendell. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We are up to item J. Well, let me ask this. Is there any other other business to be brought before the board tonight? I have one.
My one.
You want to go first? You can go first. Go ahead.
Update, as everyone knows, there's going to be 3 positions coming open on the planning board. All interviews have been completed and a decision will be made by July 7th, I think is the drop dead date. At that time, recommendations will be made to before then, recommendations will be made to the Board of Aldermen. And of course, they then will make their selections.
Thank you, Kevin.
And Madam Chair, I hope you're on that list of people being reappointed. I think you've done a fabulous job and this board would not be, you look at the work that's being done in concert with city staff, that I think it's through your leadership that we've been able to get a lot done, even in this few months that I've been on the board. And I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. Sugar, it means a lot to me. Any other business for members to bring tonight? I have one. Will, I'm going to ask you to come over here with me. As Kevin said, we're going to see new folks at this table in the next few weeks as 3 seats are up for appointment. Will indicated at the beginning of this application period that he was not reapplying with his family's plans to relocate more to the western part of North Carolina. We're going to miss Will's homegrown histories and his ideas that are sometimes a bit of a stretch. Personally, I've learned a lot from Will about who's done what and why in Southport. It's not surprising, but it can be a little bit scary. Will already knows that I'm going to stay in touch with him before and after he moves for his institutional knowledge and some of our only remaining homegrown perspective. Thank you, Will. Join me, won't you, in thanking Will for his commitment to and his native son care for the town of Southport. We ask that you accept this thank you from us. On this award, it reads, Will Hewitt, in sincere appreciation for your dedicated service to the City of Southport Planning Board, 2019 to 2025.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Here comes the true recognition.
You got RC Colas and.
Wait a minute. No,
Turn your mic on.
If you know anything about Will, he's been kind enough. He was vice chair before I became vice chair. And he was I guess he tutored me as he sat next to me with elbows and whispers. But he also nourished me. There were times when our meetings would run long, I'd be finished, he'd look at me and he'd hand me a piece of candy where he'd say, moon pie. So
Slide something across
in
the
order
table.
to honor him, his proclivities for fine food, we have prepared a basket for him.
Good heavens, you got them all.
And we have everything from beef jerky to his favorite candy, Necco's. We have his favorite soda, Calypso Tropical Tango Lemonade.
Oh,
And let's not forget the Cheermint.
yes.
And my favorite, which I may abscond with,
Beanie Weenies.
Beanie Weenies.
What you got? Ooh, doggy. You scored big.
Thank you.
We'll share it. Thank I will share this with anybody. I'm not opposed to that.
Most of us have had something slid across the table to us by Will at one time or another. Going on then to our announcements. Anything?
Just quickly, if I could, Madam Chair, just another thank you to the staff for all the work on conditional zoning. Couple years in the works. I believe the aldermen are going to vote on it next Monday, maybe. But I think it was just a phenomenal amount of work and some disappointment when you first started, and that's been rectified. And I'm glad to see that with all the work that you did. I just want the staff and the members of the board to be recognized for the hard work that went into this. And I think it's just a great amount of work. And I'm absolutely thankful for everything that you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Larry. We won't meet again until after Independence Day. So I want to wish everyone a happy and safe 4th, involved in as much or as little of our official state celebration as you'd want. Hearing no other announcements and with no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Will, that was like the last official motion, wasn't it, Jay? Motion is on the floor. Any final discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously, and that was an appropriate one too, wasn't it? Thank you so much, everyone, for your attendance. We are adjourned at 7:22.